morning and welcome to the chat on Newsday Amarillo and News Channel 10-2. I'm David Lovejoy.
And I'm the dude with Chuckatude, Chuckalicious, Chuck Williams.
And it's Wednesday, and you know what day that and what that means for us here at the chat. Our friend Jody Holland comes in. We get a little bit better each and every day, and I think this subject is going to be quite interesting today. Jody's on the road today up in Canadian Texas, but he joins us. Good morning, Jody. How you doing today?
Doing fantastic. It's a crisp morning up here, but it's very nice.
Yeah, but one of the most beautiful cities in Panhandle, Canadian Texas.
I agree.
The leaves falling and just the beautiful and great people, really great people up there. So, Jody, thank you for taking time out and hanging out with us. We're going to dive into this Generation Z, and nothing drives me crazier than when the previous generation kind of downs the next generation, and it's they're not as good, they're not as better. Like, I don't know about that. You know, it's different ways and different wavelengths of how to communicate, and I think that's one of the stumbling blocks we have in business right now, in the business world, is understanding and relating the next generation. Yeah. What motivates them, what moves them. Dig in on this topic of generation.
Well, first thing I would say is nobody's really, quote unquote, fully grown up at 21 years old.
Right.
You think back to your own generation when you were, let's say you made it through college, you graduate 21, 22 years old, you go out to get your first job, you probably don't actually know that much about life. And I think back to what I thought I knew about life at that age, and I thought I was pretty brilliant, but turns out I wasn't. You know, for me, that was around mid 1990s when I got out of college and was getting into the workplace. And I remember just thinking, we're so prepared educationally to know how to talk about stuff, but so unprepared on how to go actually explain that we know that we have something to offer. And I think that's a frustration that a lot of young people have, is that they don't know how to communicate that message of their value. And read something yesterday, CNN was doing an evaluation of Gen Z, and they were looking at the way that they interview for jobs and that kind of stuff. And with the millennial generation, now mind you, the millennials, the oldest of them are past 45 years old now. But with that generation, that was the first generation where we kind of started seeing moms and dads show up a little bit to job interviews. And it was about 1 in 50 that would show up to the job interview and wanted just to evaluate their kids so they could help them out. The positive on that is parents had a much better relationship typically with their kids, with millennial generation kids, than Gen Xers or boomers. If you're a Gen Xer and you ever held the flashlight for your dad while he was working on the car, you knew what it was like to be yelled at. You look at Gen Z, though, their relationships are even deeper with their parents typically. So 1 in 5 kids, when they go for a job interview after getting out of school, are taking their parents with them. They don't always try to take them in the interview. Some of them do, but I thought that was just interesting that parents have taken a much more active role in saying, I really want to help my kid figure this out. Now, the first time that I've had a client call me and say, hey, what do we do when their parents show up to be in the interview with them to evaluate it? I remember thinking, well, are you hiring the parent? The answer is no, then they can wait outside and they can visit with them afterwards. And typically from an HR standpoint, that's still what you want to do. You still don't want to allow a third-party observer to come in and evaluate how the person did in the interview. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that parents are taking an active role in that. It's just different. And that's kind of what you were talking about we look at the next generation and we go, oh my gosh, what is wrong with these people? But pretty much every generation does that. And you can go all the way back to Socrates, who, I'm paraphrasing here, but I fear the degradation and the moral decay in our society with young people shall surely end us all. And we're still here. We're just very, very different than we were at that point. So when you're thinking about how you're raising your kids and how you're getting them ready for the quote unquote real world, some of what you have to do is allow them to fail.
Right.
And I think that's one of the hardest things that speaking as a parent, one of the hardest things that you can do is to go, I don't want them to suffer. I don't want them to fail. I don't want them to have problems because I want them to have a better life than me. And I think every great parent is trying to get their kids to a better life. The downside of that, though, is when we suffer or when we struggle, that's when we actually grow. And if we're trying to take away the struggle, we're literally taking away their ability to face problems and overcome those problems. So it's that delicate balance that's in there of, okay, am I raising my kid to be self-sufficient, or am I protecting them to protect my own emotional state because it hurts me when they hurt? And that's, I mean, I think that's been every parent's struggle probably since the beginning of time is, oh, if I'm a good parent, I want good for my kids and I don't want them to suffer. But at the same time, if they suffer in the right way, and I don't mean you're hitting them or anything like that. I mean, they struggle, they have to face problems, they have to figure out how to do their own homework, how to do their own papers, how to find their own job. They start figuring those things out, then all of a sudden they become a very responsible adult and a very capable adult. And so that, to me, that's the balance as parents we're always having to look at is go, okay, how much do I help and how much do I let them go out there and kind of get the rear end kicked from time to time?
Jody, we've talked about this before about what disappointment or what failure brings to you, that it's an opportunity to learn. And so by taking those opportunities away, are we stunning the development of this next generation? Because, I mean, we joke about the participation trophy thing and nobody finishes last and that sort of stuff. But is that what we're creating, a group of a next generation that doesn't know how to cope with disappointment or with loss? I think we are. And I don't think it's obviously any ill intent on the part of parents because you want the best for your kids. But I do think when we take away their struggle, we're taking away their resiliency. And you correlate this psychologically, we have more anxiety, more unhappiness, more depression in youth today than what we've had in any previous generation. And a lot of the research is now pointing to the fact that you overcome anxiety and depression by facing a problem head on. But if you don't have to face a problem at all, then you're never going to overcome that anxiety because you don't believe in your own capability to do so. And we unintentionally do that to our kids when we go, oh my gosh, well, they didn't get this and I don't like them to suffer or be unhappy. So then we go fix the problem for them, which tells the kid, I don't believe you're capable. And then the kid is reinforced with this negative self-image, even though we had good intent as parents to try to make their life better. The reality is we made it more difficult for them for their future life.
I don't know if this is true, but it seems like rather than building independency, we're building dependency. How about that?
We are. And if you look, okay, so take the millennial generation, and I'm just going to say this for the millennials that are listening today. Older millennials, middle millennials, and younger millennials are nothing alike. They're lumped into a generational grouping, but their view on life is very, very different from the oldest to the youngest. But when we create this dependency or this codependency, it's because we didn't believe that our kid was capable. We do their homework for them so that they don't have to struggle or suffer or stay up late. You know, we read the book so that we can help them with that book report. I remember my dad, I wanted some help with my history homework. This was like 6th or 7th grade, something like that. And I'm like, Dad, I don't really understand this. Can you help me? And he was a history minor. He's really, really good at history. And he goes, I tell you what, if you haven't figured it out in the next 3 hours, come back and ask me some questions. And I wasn't allowed to watch TV or do anything else. I could only do the history. It never took me 3 hours to figure it out. But what I didn't realize that he was doing so well, was he was forcing me to discover that I was capable.